Now, you may remember how during the 2014 general election here in New Zealand that Kim.com brought to New Zealand Julian Assange and Edward Snowden to speak to us via video conference to explain how New Zealand was under mass surveillance by offshore interests. And we know that Kim.com himself was subject to surveillance and also to an FBI raid led by the New Zealand Police.
A High Court judge says search warrants for the internet entrepreneur's Auckland mansion were illegal.
Justice Helen Wynne-Kelman has decided the warrants used were invalid. New Zealand Police seized bank accounts on behalf of the FBI and took away property worth millions. Now they may have to give it all back.
It's a damning judgment. Illegal, unlawful, invalid. Justice Wynne-Kelman doesn't hold back.
Moving out. Move to LC. Over. Ground units. Gates are open. Move through. He's done a run overhead. Can't find him in either the studio or the bedroom.
The residence of the garage has been secured. We have 3 occupants. We're going through arrest procedures now. Over.
We have a physical location of front of property, a key directive.
One of the male targets says his name is Finn.
We have the 5 nannies plus his children up on the top of the garage. Roger that, thank you. Located target, safe room, third level over. Confirm located target, safe room, third level. Roger. Thank you.
They've been arrested on warrants relating to breach of copyright offences in the United States, money laundering and racketeering. Within New Zealand, we have seized in excess of $6 million worth of top-end motor vehicles and over $10 million in cash from several New Zealand finance companies.
The FBI claims that Kim.com made $175 million in criminal proceedings and that Mega Upload cost $500 million in harm to copyright owners.
It's quite interesting that a lobby group around entertainment content can get the White House to move against an internet nerd with military force. I mean, think about that for a moment. Isn't that, it's funny. And none of it will change anything. None of what they've done has changed anything to alter the way the internet works or the levels of piracy.
The GCSB is controlled by quite specific legislation that says you're not allowed to spy on New Zealand residents or citizens.
This is something I really like to point out that is important for me when they tapped into my iPhone. Because if that happens to you, it alters the way you think completely. You realize that it wasn't just my emails that they read. They were there when I was private with my wife. They were right there. They have no business doing that to anybody at all. find that more than a little bit disturbing. Is that a way the government is supposed to act with communications monitoring? Are you supposed to be turning the antennas that are meant to protect your country from outside threats back on yourself for the prosecution of what I'm not even sure in New Zealand is necessarily a criminal act?
Tonight, the Kim.com affair is leaving John Key's government increasingly red-faced.
The boss of the Intelligence Bureau, Prime Minister John Key, has ordered a probe into illegal bugging of the internet millionaire.
Of course, I apologise to Mr. .com. I apologise to New Zealanders, because every New Zealander that sits within the category of holding a permanent residency or a New Zealand citizen is entitled to be protected from the law. This is really a matter of mistake and human error, not one of a great conspiracy.
The whole .com mega upload process turned out to be far more than New Zealand ever bargained for. Anything that we could get wrong, we got wrong. The New Zealand authorities managed to pretty much screw up every step of the process along the way. The search warrant that was used to execute the raid, it has to be directed towards whatever the alleged criminal enterprise is. This document didn't do that. It was an incredibly vague document. The authorities in New Zealand cloned .com's laptops, which had been seized during the raid. The court had effectively said, this evidence remains in New Zealand. The FBI took the clones and sent them back to the United States. It's extraordinary. .com's rights, the process of law, had been thwarted, and there needed to be some sort of redress for that.
The internet millionaire has been back in court for a 3-day hearing. Police were quizzed about what level of threat he posed and whether the elite special tactics group was needed to execute the search warrants in January.
The police are not every day going into domestic houses armed to the teeth with automatic weapons, bashing down doors, quartering the household in a paramilitary fashion, shouting orders at one another. That's not ordinary police practice in New Zealand, is it, or have I missed something?
I think you've missed something. If the risk assessment is that there are firearms in the property, the police will not execute that search warrant without armed police.
When one reads the indictment of Mega Upload, I noticed that there were references to child pornography and terrorism. They do not have any relevance to a claim of copyright infringement, but that is part of the effort to paint the defendants as extremely dangerous and ugly and nasty persons.
And that, Your Honour, is one that I referred to.
And they had a message. The guy's dangerous, he has weapons, and so everybody thought this Kim.com guy is not just into piracy. They gave the impression that he was much more dangerous and there were other things that he might be into. And of course, that turned out to be a lie.
And so remember how I showed you in earlier episodes how the government allowed the UN peacekeeping force to come in to fight the patriots of New Zealand. Well, today they don't need the UN peacekeeping force anymore to come in because the patriots have all lost their guns since the Christchurch massacre.
They've become a very unstable country. The patriotic movement here has been able to step in to avoid that the police force has not been able to fill.
The alleged gunman has a standard A category licence. That means you can buy a semi-automatic capable of firing up to 7 rounds. But there are no restrictions on buying accessories and ammunition, meaning criminals can easily adapt these guns and make them more powerful.
There are a range of holes in our gun laws, and we are looking broadly at all of those holes.
Right now, in most circumstances, we register the person, not the gun. Because the gun owner has a licence, authorities don't notice when someone starts building up a cache of weaponry. That could change, and the government is also looking at a buyback scheme.
Certainly working on that very idea right at the moment.
The Finance Minister is looking at what Australia did after the Port Arthur massacre. Its government brought and destroyed 15,000 semi-automatic weapons.
And then after the mosque attacks, all the people that were considered right-wing in New Zealand were put under scrutiny by the police, including people like Vinnie Eastwood of The Vinnie Eastwood Show.
Gentlemen, this is Vinnie Eastwood from The Vinnie Eastwood Show. We've got two lovely officers here who've turned up. Officer whom?
Greer.
Officer Greer and?
Erica.
And they've just come by to check out, how we're doing and that kind of thing. Apparently they're checking out all sorts of different people and just popping by and saying hi. So I wanted to know just exactly what is the point of the visits, because obviously this isn't the first one today and it probably won't be the last one today, am I right? You're visiting all sorts of people for all sorts of reasons.
Yeah.
Am I right?
Yeah.
Do you yourselves have any clue why you're going, or is it just kind of like names on a list and just visiting them one by one?
We can't sort of go into that, sorry, Vinny.
This is, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, this is my 5th visit from the police. The first was like 4 in 4 days, that kind of thing, including a phone call from these guys' boss, Sam. And now this makes a visit number 5. Now, I believe the issue is somehow related to the Christchurch Mosque Massacre, because I have a rather large YouTube channel. I've got 40,000 plus subscribers. To put that in perspective, the New Zealand Herald has 28,000 subscribers. News Hub has 22,000 subscribers.
And so that visit with Vinnie Eastwood by the police took place in early April of 2019, and in April they were targeting other individuals. And this person here had his front door knocked down, and then 3 weeks later, in early May, the police returned again with the sergeant, and they arrested him when he was complaining about them knocking down his door because he assaulted them, apparently, when really I think it was the police assaulting him. And of course, assaulting a policeman requires a serious punishment, like going to jail. And so this is how they were targeting people around New Zealand who are innocent. And I suppose they should really be targeting all the veterans who fought in the ANZAC wars there at Gallipoli, who were fighting the Muslims.
The decision to drastically slash the number of ANZAC Day parades and ceremonies in Auckland is being met with a growing backlash.
Last year there were almost 90 services in the city. This year there'll be just over 20. RSA officials say while they've been taking some flack, they had little choice. Here's Kim Baker-Wilson.
We will remember them, but in far fewer places.
Let's be upset, but please be understanding, and we hope it's just for this year. But we have to change. New Zealand has changed.
And so it's 100 years after World War I in 2019 here in New Zealand. And here we are having our traditional society being eroded and undermined by these foreign forces. And many people in New Zealand don't even realise the trend or what's happening to their nation. But it certainly isn't the nation that it used to be.